By the members of the Buffalo River Watershed Board, and I'd like them to be recognized as well. And this is no special order because they're all special people. Jane Schumacher, right there. Marty Olison, the table in the back. Ginny Masulo. Brian Thompson, also at the back. And Gordon Watkins. Works literally 7 days a week on this issue. They're very dedicated people. I also want to thank the committee who put this all together, tonight's organization. Patty Kent, where's Patty? At the back with her hand up. Paula Matthews, also at the back next to Patty. Phyllis Head. And here's that name again, Jenny Masulo. If you've been by the back table, there has been some really great offerings there. So we want to thank Arcega Coffee, Greenhouse Grill, Ozark Natural Foods, and Natural Foods Grocer. And finally, we need to thank the library for offering this community space for all of us. You may have found a piece of paper at your seat that you can share with the person next to you. When Still on the Hill comes up here, we're going to need that sheet of paper, so hang on to it. There is also a letter circulating on clipboards that are letters to the governor. And basically what it says, there's a paragraph there, you can read it before you sign, but basically what it says is, as the sign back there says, no hog factories near the Buffalo River, and we're asking the governor to do something about it. There is also a brochure that we need to pick up because it describes in much more detail the study that Dr. Brahana will be describing to you. And this group is called the Karst Hydrogeology of the Buffalo National River Project, which makes for a very interesting acronym. I haven't figured out how to pronounce it yet. All right, quickly, what we're going to do this evening, we're going to start with Dr. Brahana's presentation, followed by a Q&A. We'll ask our board member and president of BRWA, Gordon Watkins, to help with the non-scientific questions that may come up. And then we'll close with a preview of Still on the Hill's new CD about the Buffalo River called Still a River. Now here's the catch. We have to be out of the library by 8 when it closes. So we're going to try to wrap up. We have to start packing up at 7:30. So I'm going to need your help in being the curmudgeon that moves things along. So let me, without further ado, introduce Dr. Van Brahana. He heads up the Karst Hydrogeology of the Buffalo National River Project. Dr. Brahana is a retired professor from the University of Arkansas, is a Karst hydrogeology professor emeritus. Prior to teaching, Dr. Brahana was a research scientist for the U.S. Geological Survey, with 50 years experience as a geologist. We say his CV is as long as a football field. Something that's not on his resume is that he's a very kind and caring person. Dr. Brahana.
Thank you very much. I'd like to invite you, in as much as we're going to have a fairly tight time schedule, there are some samples. As a geologist, as 50 years, I love rocks. I love models of the way things can be. And if you have a chance, at the end, after Still on the Hill has performed, and I've heard a little bit, and you're in for a real treat, please come up and look over these particular items. I'm going to run through some slides. lives. I'm going to talk about a beautiful valley, Big Creek. I'm going to talk about a CAFO, a concentrated animal feeding operation in that valley. And then I want to talk about some big questions associated with this particular feature. I have 3 objectives this evening. First of all, I want to talk about major problems. There are going to be many, many things that I have to gloss over. I will not even mention. But I'm going to cover 3 in some detail. I want to present factual science and present this information in a manner that hopefully you will be able to assimilate and distill and hopefully carry to your neighbors and carry to your friends and be able to communicate to others the same general type of information. And finally, I want to give you a brief suggestion for meaningful solutions that we need to take forward to communicate to the governor, to ADEQ, and to a variety of individuals who can do something about this, because this appears to have a very large political component to it. As you're well aware, the Buffalo, it overlies a region of the Boston Mountains. It heads in the Boston Mountains. It runs through a region that's got a lot of limestone, karst, and then it also includes, that's this portion that's shown in tan, that's the region of the Boone Formation. And I'm going to talk a lot about the Boone Formation tonight because it's got some karst features that make it very, very important and has been, unfortunately, not covered in many other studies or in any environmental assessments. Here's where the hog farm, this is the area of the recharge basin of Big Creek. It's an approximate area, but it gives you a general sense of where it occurs. I'm going to talk about our group, the KHBNR, Karst Hydrogeology of the Buffalo National River. That's a mouthful, and as Jack said, how do you pronounce that? Well, I needed to put the word karst in our title because virtually every group from the agencies that I just mentioned have ignored the fact that this holy land, this rock with holes in it, that transmits water so quickly, it transmits waste so quickly, it has not been recognized. It has not been described. Let me share briefly what our group, some of the people who are in our group, and mostly the key word here is diverse. We have people who have worked in all kinds of jobs. They've been university professors, they've been medical doctors. Some of them are still students, and they are spectacular in their enthusiasm. All of them are volunteers. All of them love the river. They do not have any preconceived notions other than this particular approach to putting concentrated animals, 6,503 at current count, and there's a plan for more to be involved shortly. These are very close to the river itself, and that is a great concern for those of us who hike, who float, who swim, who fish in this wonderful location. Let's look at a few of the individuals, and these are just a few. So you can put a name, you can put faces to this. People who are cavers, karst scientists, and they're able to find caves, they're able to find sinkholes, they're able to get out in streams and springs and measure the amount of water that is flowing. They are able to do tremendous tasks. They're able to collect water from wells and springs and rivers and creeks And these are downstream from where the karst issues this water back up to the surface so we can get at it fairly easily. And we do a tremendous amount of dye tracing. Dye tracing means we put in a non-toxic colored water that gives the water a fingerprint. We put out little packets of charcoal that when the dye goes past, they're attracted, they stick, they attach to the charcoal. We bring those back into the laboratory and we're able to come up with, if we put the dye in here, it comes out here. And some of that information is unbelievably complex, and it is very valuable for the studies that we're doing. I told you I was going to talk about three general problems, or three typical problems. I've delineated these problems in red, but essentially what I want to talk about, this particular feature deals with what was called the Notice of Intent. That was the first document that was presented to the Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality, ADEQ, and this did not have any information about karst whatsoever, no mention of the term. It did not have any description of groundwater. In karst, groundwater represents a major component of the hydrologic budget. So that's very, very important. And then finally, there was no existing water quality. How do we know what the impact of this particular feature, this CAFO, will have on this gorgeous valley unless we know what starting conditions were? And that nothing was done to delineate this. A 30-day effort, and it was a done deal. Let me talk about karst very briefly. There are some, again, the features at the front table will show you some of this, but essentially it is a type of environment that is underlain by rock that is easily dissolved. That includes limestone, it includes a bunch of other rock types, but generally limestone is the most prevalent here in the southern Ozarks. As the water moves through, it dissolves, just like your coffee dissolves the sugar you put in it, so that when you drink it, you don't find a glob of sugar or a wad of sugar down at the bottom of the cup. It's dissolved, it makes it sweet. Well, in this particular case, the water that comes from upstream in this region is dissolving the rock itself. And that makes features such as sinkholes, caves, sinking streams, Swiss cheese openings in the rock itself. It creates a very open pathway, and it makes the groundwater a much larger segment of where the water goes. In many cases, in most cases, sandstone, shale, the water flows off the top. It acts more like an umbrella. Some sinks in, but not very much. In karst, that's not the case. Flow is very, very rapid. Contamination is very easy because there are big openings. The water is not in close contact with fine-grained material which is able to filter the water. This gives you a nice example, and a spectacular example. Tom Verica developed this model for us, and essentially this is a three-dimensional slice, just as this model is, and it allows you to see when you, if this is a CAFO on this particular region, that where the waste is spread on the fields, and this waste contains feces, urine, wastewater. It's not a particularly desirable component that we would like in our drinking water or in water that we have primary contact with from such an extraordinary resource river as the Buffalo. It has many details here, but essentially this represents the Boone Formation. The Boone Formation is a combination of chert and limestone, and the water moves down through it. It can move laterally, and it comes out as any number of springs. If we count all the small springs, there are literally thousands of small springs in this particular area. Here is a second item that I'm very interested in sharing. Judge D. Price Marshall, Jr. Evaluated the interpretation of the federal agencies that made the claim that there was no environmental problem associated with this particular operation. And he said, his claim, he charged that group with taking a hard look, go back, redo this, because there are a variety of practical questions you did not appear to take care of. And so with that claim, the following series of environmental assessments came about. This came from groups, they're consulting groups. They were done for the benefit of the agencies, the Small Business Agency and the Farm System group that guaranteed the loans for the capital. There's no evidence that there's karst. The basis was looking at maps, topographic maps of the area and aerial photographs. We didn't see any sinkholes. You help me. You tell me if this is karst, because I have bias. As a scientist, I try not to be biased, but I have some. Is this karst? Is that dye going into the ground? Is it going into a sinkhole, or is that a sinking stream? I can't make decisions for you. I'll let you decide. What about this Swiss cheese approach of between the chert layers and the limestone? This area along the entire reach of Big Creek looks like this. These areas are areas that have been dissolved out. Not completely, but the segments of limestone are so open that huge volumes of water can move through those. The surface water, Big Creek, can interact when it floods. The water goes back in. When it comes out, it flows out. There are a bunch of small springs. This gives you a good viewpoint. No karst. Here's a picture of one of the samples I have up here. Man, that looks holy. Holy ground, I call it. Holy ground. And downstream, this is down almost to the Buffalo, and this shows you the size of some of the voids. These are absolutely huge caves that exist in this feature, in this area, in this wonderful, glorious basin. Here's where the hog farm is. I have added that word karst, not to convince you otherwise or not to deceive you in any way, but that's based on scientific information from many of my colleagues and friends who work in the same general field. And overall, what I want to show you is the repeat term that in response to Judge Marshall's request for a hard look, there is no karst. They did not spend any time in the field. They did not describe this carefully. They were the lowest bidder on a federal project that allows them to cover projects that may be questionable. And in this particular case, that was a big question. Okay, here's problem number 3, and this is one I want to spend a little time with. There is no evidence of water quality degradation at this time from the cathode. This is described by the Division of Agriculture team. They have been funded at, I believe so far they've received, ultimately are going to look at maybe $750,000 of tax money that's on top of other salaries. These are individuals who make six-figure salaries, special interest individuals, and the focus is essentially agriculture and extension. I want to make it very clear that I have no problem with farmers, with small farmers. I have been, I guess the easiest way to say is that I've been sort of singled out and when I talk about these things, I'm anti-farm. That's the farthest thing from my mind. The people in this valley who are small farmers, who are not big industrial agricultural farmers, are very, very concerned with water quality and with other problems associated with this. My great-grandfather was president of the American Farm Bureau Federation. I claim that to call me an anti-farmer it's not the truth. Simple as that. And I call people out who make that claim. All right, here's the data. Here's where the data comes from. NPS, National Park Service, USGS, United States Geological Survey. They study all kinds of water problems in the state. KHBNR, that's our volunteer group of the people you just saw earlier. And we took the data from the Division of Agriculture, it's called Big Creek Research and Extension Team, and their data on dissolved oxygen and fecal coliform, not fecal coliform, but E. coli, which is an indicator organism of waste material from the guts of warm-blooded animals, humans. Those are the data that we used. Here's what I want to synthesize. Associated with microbes, the microbes themselves are these tiny microorganisms. They cause more trouble, more health problems, more death than virtually anything else in groundwater studies that I have been associated with. Those are increased based on data that we have, that the BCRET team, the Big Creek Research Team, that's a Division of Agriculture group, they have, they found the data, we took the data, we ran the statistics, we ran everything else, and it's above the limit that ADEQ says is contaminated or is impaired. Impaired is the word. Nutrients. What are nutrients? Phosphorus, nitrogen, substances that are essential for plant growth. And that's one of the claims. Why are they spreading these, the waste from these organisms on the field? Essentially, primarily to help the grass grow so the cattle can utilize it and eat it. But if you put too much on, you exceed a limit. They have there is a criteria that's based, phosphorus index, that is based on the actual component. And this was high from the start. We had limits, we had data that showed that nitrate, prior to the start of, the CAFO started in the summer of 1913. They started bringing pigs in. We went out and we collected data almost immediately from that time. We found greater than EPA limits of nitrate there. What does nitrate do to you? If you're an old folk, if you're a young baby, it impacts the ability of your blood to transmit oxygen. It has significant impacts, and we found values above the nitrate limit. Dissolved oxygen helps the ecology. All of these animals, all of these organisms, all of these endangered species, during the summer, all of these parameters, all of these water quality features vary with time. And in this particular circumstance, the dissolved oxygen level went below the impaired limit based on National Park Service data, based on USGS data. Trace metals, these are things that they occur in very small concentrations, parts per billion. That's a number that's, it doesn't make sense to most of us. I mean, I've studied it for a long time, and the values that we have of these constituents are at levels that are anomalously high. That is 100, 1,000, greater than 1,000 times higher than surrounding areas, coming off of springs which drain the fields where these wastes are spread. And the things that really bother me, animal health. Some of the farmers are having trouble with their newborn calves. One man had 21 newborn calves, 13 of them got E. coli poisoning, one died at this particular time. He lives immediately down gradient from a site that has received a tremendous amount of these wastes, more than was allowed. Human health. There are some people in this area that have young babies, and there are some older folks, and they have reports of unique health problems. I don't have, these are complex issues. I certainly cannot say that this is truly to be put on the hog capo, but nobody's looking at it. The state agencies are not looking at it. The people that your taxes are paying are not looking at it. The problems with the chemistry we see, I'm going to show you right now. When stream flow goes up, here's rainfall. This is a rainfall event. When stream fall gets a lot of rain, there's a lot more water. The plus means there's a lot more water in the stream. The flow increases. What happens to the dissolved chemicals? They get diluted. The values actually can go down. It's not an easy thing to measure in a real-world situation where there's all kinds of, there's rain, there's pumping, there are a variety of things that happen. But nonetheless, these are estimates.